So with treaty, a lot of times we have a treaty, and you'll hear that we have now land claims, and there's differences in interpretation of what was agreed upon. So that's why we have now land claims. And then you hear sometimes that we have Aboriginal rights and treaty rights, and then sometimes you'll hear that other people will say, how come Indians get all this for free? And this is what, it takes a longer time to explain all this, but sometimes you'll get an understanding of it actually isn't for free. If you actually really looked at what we gave up in the deal and how we got the shorter end of the deal, then it actually is supposed to be, we're supposed to keep getting this as a benefit of the original proprietors and the original people of this land. So that's what this is about, looking at treaties in that way. So one of the first things that we try to talk about as well, in Ojibwe, we ask people what's the word for treaty. And in my area, I ask D0rpMZgkg. I went and talked to an old man, and I asked him different things, and Tam dashin gi mi now asema. I gave him tobacco first to help me to understand. Nadamoshin win sustama gajawebak. Help me understand what happened. That's what I asked him. And so I gave him that tobacco, then he started talking about it. And when I was learning to speak Ojibwe, I knew the word to tell somebody a report or to narrate something. Somebody would say, Windamage. So he'd say, Mr. Corbiere, Darren, gi Windamage. Darren told or gave a report. And then if you say Darren told the principal or his boss, then you'd say, Darren gi Windamawan Gimaman. He told the boss or the chief. So the next part is then you say, in Ojibwe, we the way our language works, we sometimes put the emphasis on the initial syllable to say that something was done over and over. So if I sat here for a long time, I'm just sitting now, I'd say Ndon namadap. But if I sat for a prolonged period, I'd say Ndon nam dap. And I made that first part nam dap, made it long. So the same thing when we talk about telling somebody something, we say wa windamawa. Gi wa windamawa, and now we may, instead of saying we told them over and over, we say that means a promise. Gi wa windamawa, I promised him something. So the other thing we do in Ojibwe, we change, some of you students know, or you may have heard people say, those words are so long, why do we have to have such long words? But if you look at those whole words in our language, that's actually a whole sentence. So when you take that whole English sentence, you put it by that Ojibwe word, same page length, same space on the page. It's no longer, no shorter. It's just we're more compact, putting everything into one. So the other thing we do is within the word, we can change the internal part of the word, and we say that you and I did this. So Ngi wa windamadame. Me and this guy, we promised to each other. Ngi wa windamadame. We promised something to each other. So that's the word for us in our language for treaty. Wa windamadawin. A mutual promise. Promising things together. That's what we say in Ojibwe for a treaty. So it's the same thing now today with the Anishinaabe people. Here we say, Mr. Corbiere kinomage. Mr. Corbiere is teaching. Mr. Corbiere teaches. Mr. Corbiere kinomage. But we say, Mr. Corbiere is teaching young Anishinaabe people. Mr. Corbiere kinomawan Anishinaabe son. He's teaching young Anishinaabe. And then if they actually start, what the Anishinaabe people believe is that teaching and learning are a mutual two-way thing, that the teacher and the student actually teach each other. So then that's when we would say, Mr. Corbiere meanwhile, kinomaganan, kinomadok, they teach each other. So we do that same thing, we add that adok, adame in that word. So we look at wampum, And wampum is actually a word, what they call it in the Algonquian language on the the east coast here. And some of you may know, and some of you may not know, that it's actually a saltwater organism. But how many of you watch Family Guy? You watch Family Guy? What's their town? And that's what this is. Quahog. I always say Quahog, but it's Quahog, I guess. So this I got this from Peter. Pass that on, Stewie. Just kidding. So that's actual wampum. So you see the purple edge there? That's the part that they would carve out and they would make into beads. And so you'll see here all the colors in here, part of the white. That's a string of wampum. They make the beads, they make them into beads. So that's the one they use for purple. Now what I've been told is that's on the East Coast. So here Anishinaabe people are surrounded by fresh water. So we would never have had that ourselves. But it's through trading networks that we receive that. And that's the one thing that I want to stress to you, is that a lot of people here, before we say before Pale people came here, we all traded with each other. And one of the things we traded as well was copper from this area. So we have wampum, which in our language we call migas, and we have misquabic, which is called red metal. So the people, when they would have, long time ago we didn't have pockets. Here's what they used to do, how they would wear their bag. They would wear their bag like this. And then sometimes later on, after they saw non-native people come, then they put their bags like this. Because they put what they call a powder horn. Beandagen, they call that. Makade beandagen, makade on, where they keep their gunpowder. But here's where they would keep that. And here's that white, real white wampum. So in our language we say migas for that. And in here, this is a little cowrie shell. A friend of mine gave me this, and he said he got it from people when he was on the Powwow Trail, and they actually had this, and it was west of the Mississippi. But I've never seen this kind before, and it's also called migas. The usual kind I see for that cowrie shell, that's also called migas, is this kind here. And maybe Mr. Corbiere covered this story with you about the migas and Anishinaabe people. So you see people also, Anishinaabe people, especially women, they'll make a stole and they put that, decorate that all around on themselves as well. So that's the migas. But where we are from, how many of you have go swimming in the summer and dive for clams? So that's a clam is at the bottom of the lake and he makes a trail, right? At the bottom of the lake and he makes a trail. That one we call S. You know, you can almost like say the letter S. It sounds the same thing. So you learn the Anishinaabe word S. That means clam. So when you say S, instead of this, that's that clam in the freshwater, S, and the migas is the one that's from the salt water in our language. So our word for wampum in our language is migas. But then they started to make a lot of different things with this. And our enemies, the Haudenosaunee, were the ones that brought this to us. And then we also have a group of people on the eastern seaboard called Delaware. and there's a state called Delaware. And these guys, when they first met the non-native people, the Delaware were forced west. And they're forced west so many different times that they end up living in down in southern Ontario at a place called Moraviantown. But whenever those people came, they called themselves in their language Lenape. And you can almost hear it sound like Anishinaabe, as a related language, just like how French, Spanish, and Italian are called Romance languages. Delaware, Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi, Cree are called Algonquian languages. So there's some related language to it.